Dr. Joeckel, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing fine, doing fine.
Thank you. I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I'm familiar with at least what I've seen reported about what occurred with you, which may or may not be accurate. And so that's where I want to start. Um, First of all, thank you for joining us. It's my understanding that you have driven over to St. Petersburg to join us, right?
That's correct. I made the drive with my 18-year-old daughter.
Hmm.
She's here in the fellowship hall.
Wow. Thank you. Where did you drive from today?
North Palm Beach.
Oh, so that's a several-hour drive.
Yeah, 3.5 hours.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that and for joining us. Um, let's start here just asking you to share your story with everybody, including myself. So my understanding is that you have been a longtime teacher and you were fired in the not distant past for doing something that you've been teaching for some time. Is that correct?
Right. So I was a professor of English and professor in the honors program at Palm Beach Atlantic University for over 20 years. I worked my way up from assistant to associate to full professor. I wrote the books. I wrote the articles in the peer-reviewed journals. I served on the committees. I got good teaching evaluations. I led the London semester twice. That all came to a screeching halt just a few months ago. It began on February 15th. I had finished teaching a class. I walked out of the classroom, and there waiting for me outside the classroom were the provost and my dean. They asked if they could speak with me privately. So we went back into the classroom, and the dean handed me an envelope and said, inside that envelope is an official document notifying you that the issuance of your letter of renewal, your contract renewal, is being delayed pending a review of your racial justice unit. So I had been teaching a racial justice unit in a number of my classes for 12 years. And in those 12 years, not once had any administrator or any parent or any student voiced any concern about the racial justice unit. This was the very first time. I asked the dean if he could elaborate on what was wrong with my racial justice unit. And he told me that a parent called the president of the university and said that I was indoctrinating students. So the dean said, the concern is that you are indoctrinating students. And I might add that the dean had to cut short that impromptu meeting because he had to prepare for Governor Ron DeSantis's arrival on campus. Governor DeSantis was giving a talk at the university that same afternoon. So it was then about 3 weeks later that I received official notice that I had been fired from the university.
So you had been an assistant professor, an associate professor, and a full professor. I had the great fortune to move through those ranks too. I'm no longer a university professor because I wanted to do this work. And I know how hard it is and how much work goes into that success and those accomplishments. Also, you had been an effective instructor, so much so that you had led in a study abroad program for the university. I want to ask you in a moment to kind of share with us as much as you're comfortable about what the feeling is to you right now after all of this, because of that is a separation that is akin to a separation from a loved one at some level. But first, I just want to ask you a follow-up question about the logistics that are involved. Were you at any point in time given an opportunity with the leadership of the university to discuss, to debate, to make a case for how it is that this was not fair?
So I had 2 follow-up meetings with the university administrators. But to be honest with you, both of those meetings felt to me like interrogations, where I was really never given a chance to defend myself. And that's just not my perspective. The American Association of University Professors investigated the circumstances surrounding my termination. The AAUP reached out to me, and I gave them, with my lawyer's help,
That's the Association of American University Professors.
The Association of American University Professors, AAUP, yeah. So I gave them my side of the story. Then they reached out to the president of Palm Beach Atlantic University, and she gave the university side of the story. The AAUP then issued a letter to me and to the university, urging them to rescind the termination because, in their words, it seems like at Palm Beach Atlantic University, due process and academic freedom are non-existent. So the AAUP agreed with me that no, I was not afforded due process. This happened so precipitously and so unexpectedly. I had no idea that this was coming. But of course, you know, when the dean notifies me and then tells me, well, look, I got to go prepare for Governor DeSantis' arrival on campus, I'm like, I mean, I even asked him right then, don't you see a connection here? Do you see what's happening? That it's not coincidence that you're going right now to prepare for Governor DeSantis's arrival, and as you're telling me that there is a problem with my racial justice unit, but it was just lost on him. The provost actually kind of giggled, like she was aware at least. But yeah, it just got uglier and uglier after that.
Have you been given any severance money at all, like a year's worth of pay or anything?
Oh no, I mean, my contract was supposed to expire at the end of next academic year. So they not only canceled that, but they terminated my employment on March 15th. So beginning on March 15th, I was no longer receiving a paycheck.
Wow. Okay, there are two topics I want to get into here. So just to kind of like give you time to think about them, the sequencing here is I want to ask you like kind of your feelings and thoughts about all of this as much as you're comfortable sharing. Then I want to get into the issue of faith, religious faith, Christian faith, and the reality of Palm Beach Atlantic University, and also some of the things I've seen you talk about in terms of your commitment to this work. And then I want to kind of try to close us by talking about the reality on the screen right now is we're two white guys talking to each other. Okay. And I want to bring that up in this context. So those are the three kind of things I'd like to touch base on. So let me start with, my wife is a Christian minister. Okay. And faith is an important part of our life. And the reality is that Palm Beach Atlantic claims to profess to be a Christian university. You have talked about the importance of faith in the public remarks I've seen you talk about. So first, question A is, how does this feel to you all? And question B, and maybe there's an arc to it all, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that arc. And then question B is, how are you unpacking your faith teachings and the college's claims about who they are? So we'll start with you first about just kind of your where you're at.
Yeah, well, wow. When Dr. Whitehead was talking earlier about the threat that white evangelical Christianity poses, I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, I've lived that. I know that's the world that I came from. Palm Beach Atlantic University does not self-identify as evangelical, but it is evangelical in everything but its name. So, and in fact, you know, in my racial justice unit, in fact, that PRRI poll that Dr. Whitehead, I use that same bit of statistical evidence in my racial justice unit to try to open the eyes of my white evangelical students. I think that I am just utterly disheartened by what what atrocities the university is committing in the name of Christianity. I think it is just horrific that white Christianity has joined forces with these conservative politicians who are doing everything they can to shut down these difficult but important, truthful conversations that we need to have. But it's not that new, though, is it? I mean, let me share with you some quotations that I also use in my racial justice unit. These quotations that I use in my racial justice unit are all just attestations of white Christianity's shortcomings over the years. So here's just a few. So I'll start with Frederick Douglass. There is the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ. To be the friend of the one is of necessity to be the enemy of the other. Ida B. Wells. Our American Christians are too busy saving the souls of white Christians from burning in hellfire to save the lives of black ones from present burning in fires kindled by white Christians. W.E.B. Du Bois. A nation's religion is its life, and as such, white Christianity is a miserable failure. James Cone. Black people did not need to go to seminary and study theology to know that white Christianity was fraudulent. As a teenager in the South where whites treated blacks with contempt, I and other blacks knew that the Christian identity of whites was not a true expression of what it meant to follow Jesus. Or even like Billy Graham's response to Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. Billy Graham's response to that was to say, only when Christ comes again will little white children of Alabama walk hand in hand with little black children. I think that what Palm Beach Atlantic University should have done is made good on one of the core principles that they supposedly uphold, and that core principle is accountability. They should be accountable for what they have done. Or to put it in Christian terms, they should do what is supposed to be foundational to Christianity, what unites just about every denomination of Christianity through the centuries, and that is confess, repent, act, and then maybe search for reconciliation. I think that is what is needed right now from white Christians. But, you know, after what PBA did to me, I'm not holding my breath, and my faith is torn and tattered.
So you brought your daughter with you for this, so she's heard this story a bunch.
She has, yeah.
You're a dad then too. Okay, so walking this through as a parent and trying to model integrity. Also, I can imagine that I'm a parent of two, one who's in college and one who's a 14 and 15-year-old, and I'm always mindful of that responsibility that comes too. Would you? Is there? When you look when you're riding the car 3.5 hours together and you're thinking about making an earning for your family, and you're thinking about all of the ways in which you try to live out your truths and your faith and your beliefs, is this all, where do you put this? Is this something that you wish you, I'm trying to avoid, like, do you regret this? Because I can't imagine you regret this as a person of integrity. But would you like to have known this 10 years ago, or is it coming right now because you're ready to handle it? How are you unpacking this in your own kind of like narrative of yourself?
Yeah. Well, I told myself on February 15th, right after the dean told me that there's concern that you're indoctrinating students, I told myself, I am not going to back down at all. The university has steamrolled over other faculty members over the years. That's a secret fact that PBA professors know that they don't talk about. So when this happened to me, I said, no, I'm going to fight this. And I realized, I mean, as soon as they gave me that letter, I realized my job is probably my job's probably over. This is probably the end. But I said, so what? I'm gonna fight it. Yeah, I'm an English professor. Do you have any idea what the job market is like for English professors? The job market for English professors is worse than horrible. So, chances are I will never be a full-time English professor again. That's it for me. So yeah, I mean, this last few months is just, I've been, reevaluating everything. It's been just a seismic shift in my life. Everything has been kind of turned upside down. My family's sticking close to me. My wife is so supportive, and she is behind me all the way. She supports every step I've taken. But you're right. I definitely don't regret anything. I do have a lawyer. A couple weeks ago, on my behalf, the lawyer filed federal charge of discrimination with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Associational discrimination is what it's called. There's legal precedent for that. I'm white, obviously, but I was teaching racial justice. It's against the law to make the teaching of racial justice the basis for termination. So I'm going to fight it to the bitter end. I have a great lawyer who believes in my cause. So yeah, I still have a lot of fight in me.
Costs money too. So is there anybody I can't miss the fact that there's been a $2 million GoFundMe for a guy who killed somebody, a white guy who killed a black man on a New York subway. A $2 million GoFundMe for that. And this is going to cost money for you. Is there any public kind of GoFundMe site out there for you or anything like that?
Yeah, I need to give a shout out to Jemar Tisby. Jemar Tisby is the author of The Color of Compromise. He's a historian, and he is just an amazing person. So right after this happened, I reached out to him and had a long phone conversation with Jemar Tisby, and he started a GoFundMe for me to help me out. If you're listening, Jemar, thank you for all of your help. He's been so supportive. And that's really helped me a lot. I've received a lot of support from people. When I first went public with this on social media, the response from former students was just overwhelming. I mean, you can still go back to my original post on February 16th or whatever, and just read through students who are responding. Students I've had 15, 20 years ago are like, we stand behind you on this, and we're here to help. What can we do? So I have received a good amount of support. And yeah, I need that.
Okay, I want to add kind of to close this, and we could spend a lot more time with you, sir. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your commitment. So you probably have in your mind some sense of the specific things that tipped the iceberg here, okay, at some point in there. But even if you don't have a specific kind of set of quotes or teachings in your classroom that supposedly crossed the line, there is a commitment that runs much, much deeper for you that spans many years of teaching about racial justice. Where does that come from for you?
So, excuse me. I was born and raised into a very conservative Republican family. When I was in high school and even a couple of years into college, I was like, listening to Rush Limbaugh. I was gung ho. Then about halfway through college, I realized that this political worldview is inhumane, and it is racist. And I realized that I can't live this way anymore. So I abandoned that outlook and decided I need to find my own way. Just that act of self-determination at a relatively young age, formative years, was important for me. I mean, literally everyone in my family was and is conservative, Republican, Trump voting. So that to me is just wrong. And I'm still like the black sheep of the family. I think it's also just, I'm kind of wired this way to fight against injustices. I'll share with you one other defining moment, and I'll use this one because it involves my daughter and she's here. We were on vacation in Chicago, my whole family, my wife and my daughter and my son. And we were on the observation deck of the, is it called the Hancock Tower? I think it's the highest building in Chicago. I've
been there. Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And we're looking down at the streets of Chicago, and it just so happens that there was a Black Lives Matter protest going on. And we're like, wow, look at this. I mean, it's here in real time. They're marching down there right now. And we stood there and just watched it. But my daughter, who was 10 at the time, was like, let's go down there and let's march with them. And she was really fired up. And man, I saw that in her eyes. And I was like, that's my daughter. And I think it was about that time, actually, that I said, you know what? Even though it's not my field of expertise, I know something about it and I want to know more. I might want to do a racial justice unit in some of my classes. And so I think that was the catalyst, that moment in Chicago when it was like, I got to do something about this. I see it in my daughter's eyes. Yeah, this is powerful. So I think that's when I started doing the unit.
Thank you so much for your time with us. I'm sure there are people there in the hall that already have and would love to chat with you and talk with you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your commitment. And we want to stay in touch with you. We respect the work, the commitments you've made, the sacrifices you've put forward. And so thank you so much for your commitment, your work, for your convictions. And I know my colleagues there will follow up with you, but I look forward to the chance of meeting you in person sometime, Dr. Joeckel.
I'd like that very much. Thank you. And it's an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you so much.